Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we'll be discussing about configuring of the Raspberry Pi from the subject Internet of Things, and the subject code is 18CS81. Introduction. Configuring Raspberry Pi involves setting up of the operating system, connecting peripherals and customizing settings. Raspberry Pi it is a versatile single board computer and that can be used for the various projects and applications. Proper configurations ensures optimal performance and functionality of the Raspberry Pi. Getting started with this Raspberry Pi, to configure Raspberry Pi, you will need a micro SD card with the operating system, power supply, HDMI cable and peripherals. Insert the micro SD cards with the operating system into the Raspberry Pi and connect it to a display using a HDMI cables. Power on the Raspberry Pi by connecting the power supply and should see the boot screen on the display. So now we'll look into initial setup and configuration. So follow on the screen promotes to set up the languages, time zone and the other basic settings of the Raspberry Pi. You can configure the network setting to connect the Raspberry Pi to the internet via the Wi-Fi or Ethernet. It is recommended to update the operating system and software packages to ensure security and stability. Here it is like what's your home country region. So you have to select the region here. Then which of the languages do you prefer? And so here it is a English that is selected. And which keyboard layout would you like to choose? It is a US and we have to choose the time zone for it. Advanced configuration operations. It customizes the desktop environment, install additional softwares, and configure user accounts on the Raspberry Pi. Enable SSH, that is Secure Cell, for the remote access to the Raspberry Pi and configure the firewall settings for the security. Explore advanced configurations such as overclocking, boot options, and system optimizations. Setting up now, you will set up the GPIO pins. So GPIO, it is a general purpose input output pins on the Raspberry Pi that allows you to connect to the control of the external devices. Configure of the GPIO pins using the software libraries such as RPI, GPIO or PIC-GPIO to interact with the sensors, LEDs, motors and more. Properly configure and test GPIO pins to ensure the compatibility and functionality with the external hardware. Configuring storage and file sharing. Configure external storage devices such as USB devices or the network attached storage for the additional storage space. Set up SAP or NFS to share the files and the folders between the Raspberry Pi and the other devices on the internet. Use cloud storage servers like Dropbox or Google Drive for the cloud-based file sharing and synchronization. In this slide, we'll look into securing of the Raspberry Pi. So first, we have to implement the security measures such as changing default passwords, enabling firewall settings, and updating the software regularly using encryption tools like BitLocker or VeraCrypt to secure sensitivity data on the Raspberry Pi. Monitoring system logs, install antivirus software, and be cautioned for the potential security risk to protect your Raspberry Pi applications. Configuring of the audio and the video. Set up audio output for sound playback through HDMI 3.5 mm audio jack or USB audio devices. Configure video settings for the display resolution, orientation, and dual monitoring setup on the Raspberry Pi. Install media player softwares like VLCs, for the multimedia playback and streaming on the Raspberry Pi. Power management and energy efficiency enables power saving features, adjust screen brightness, and manage the power consumption settings on the Raspberry Pi. Utilize sleep mode or automatic shutdown to reduce the energy usage or prolong the life of the Raspberry Pi. Consider using a power efficient power supply and implementing the power management strategies for optimal energy efficiency. Now we'll look into configuration through the wireless connectivity. Set up Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth connections on the Raspberry Pi for the wireless communication with the other devices. Configure wireless access points, connect to the Bluetooth peripherals, and troubleshoot connectivity issues. Use tools like Bluetooth or WPA supplied for the managing wireless communications and connection systems on the Raspberry Pi. Monitoring and performance tuning. Monitoring system resources, CPU usage, and the memory consumption and temperature to optimize the performance. Use tools like T-Top, IOTop, or for tracking of the system performance metrics and identify the bottlenecks. Perform performance tuning by adjusting the system setting, disabling unnecessary services, and optimizing the software for the better efficiency. Configuring the web services and applications. Set up web servers like Apache or LightTDP on the Raspberry Pi for hosting the websites or the web applications. Configure the database servers like MySQL or the SQLite for storing and managing the data on the Raspberry Pi. Install web development frameworks like Flask, Django, or Node.js for creating the dynamic web applications on the Raspberry Pi. Implementing Internet of Things projects. So when we use Raspberry Pi, that is for implementing of the IoT projects connecting through the sensors, actuators, and devices to collect and exchange of the data. Configure MQTT, COAP, and other IoT protocols for communication between the Raspberry Pi and IoT devices. Build IoT applications for home automation, environmental monitoring, smart agriculture, and more using Raspberry Pi. Troubleshooting. So we'll look into what are the common issues faced here. Identifying the troubleshooting such as boot errors, network connectivity problems, and software conflicts. Check out the system logs, error messages, and hardware connection to diagnose and resolve the issues on the Raspberry Pi. Seek help from the online forums, documentation, and community support to troubleshoot challenging problems efficiently. Conclusion. Configuring of the Raspberry Pi requires setting up of the hardware, software, and the peripherals to meet your project's requirements. Refer to the official documentation, online tutorials, forms, and community resources for the guidance and support and configuring of the Raspberry Pi. Get creative or the experiment and have fun exploring the endless possibilities of the Raspberry Pi for learning, prototyping, and innovation. Thank you. Please do like, share, and subscribe.